people like me. You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Okay, we'll start with this veteran boxing scribe, Sean Zettel. Reacting to this past weekend's middleweight title fight between Thibeault and Desley Robinson, stated that Thibeault would be the best opponent and biggest threat to Claressa Shields she's had since Savannah Marshall. Possibly ever.
All this about a fighter with only 5 professional fights.
She's only got 5 fights in, but she's a very sharp southpaw and carries power. That's a great matchup at 160.
Did he say this to compliment Thibeault, or did he say this to get the ball rolling for Claressa to chase another overmatched opponent? Because that's what Tam would be. I find it very hard to believe that he derived this much from a 4-0 fighter going the distance with Desley Robinson.
What turned out to be a blip on Claressa Shields' radar after all, as Claressa responded by saying she would not be a threat to me. Don't let my real experience go over your head. Tam is a good fighter, but she is green compared to me. If y'all want her to have a 1 on her record, I'll gladly do it. Here y'all go, trying to use my stardom to build another fighter y'all know I can beat. It's sad. Be honest for once.
Yes, let's be honest. I don't trust Sean Zettel's evaluation of what he saw on Saturday. I would sooner expect that this was orchestrated by Sean Zettel and Claressa Shields jointly.
If you want me to be honest.
Honest to me is that Claressa Shields might have reached out to Sean and told him to say this publicly in the DMs, not dissimilar to what she tried to do with Cameron Giles in the DMs about Katie and Amanda
When she messaged him.
That's just me being honest, because I find it very hard to believe, in Sean's estimation, a 4-0 fighter this weekend is the greatest threat to Claressa Shields perhaps ever.
That's what he really thinks.
I find that very hard to believe, and I think that it actually gives Claressa Shields a reason to go after an MVP fighter who was not otherwise targeting her. Because when they asked Tam about fighting Claressa, this is what she said.
Next, I don't know, because I think what's next for me is to go home, be with my animals, be with my other half. I think I'm going to take some rest, and I'm going to evaluate and see what's next for me. But right now, I don't have to make a decision, and I'm okay with that.
Tam didn't mention targeting Claressa Shields before the Desley Robinson fight, and she has no immediate plans of targeting her after the Desley Robinson fight.
Nobody's stupid. It doesn't benefit Tam at all to have that fight sooner than later when she couldn't have been a professional boxer for more than, 2 years now?
So Tam, not actually going after Claressa wouldn't have the ammunition to then go after her unless somebody else gives it to her. Somebody like Sean Zettel, and what is his penchant for trying to get invited to the proverbial cookout?
You don't think you're reaching?
No, I don't think it's a reach that Claressa Shields might have reached out to Sean, or Sean might have reached out to her clandestinely to orchestrate this public display. His take is disingenuous, to say the least. You think that Tam is ready for Claressa based on what she showed with Desley, when what I saw states the opposite. She needs more fights. She needs more rounds.
What, her being 5-0 didn't make that obvious enough? She only has 5 professional fights.
You don't have to be Bert Sugar to know she needs more experience before fighting somebody like Claressa, no matter what happened with Desley Robinson. She could have walked in there on Saturday and punched her head clean off her shoulders in the first round. She would still need more experience before fighting someone like Claressa. So what I think
this is orchestrated. Call me a conspiracy theorist.
But my intuition tells me there may have been some correspondence between Sean and Claressa beforehand to do this publicly.
To give Claressa an excuse to start talking about another MVP fighter, because Tam wasn't talking about her.
And she's banned from attending any further MVP events. And this is gonna sound strange to most of you, but Tam's not the one that needs that fight. Claressa is, because Claressa's already been there and done that with many of the fighters at or around these weights, and currently, she's the one facing a scarcity of opponents, not Tam.
Tam is really just starting out. As stated, she couldn't have been a professional boxer for more than 2 years now.
For a grand total of 5 fights, what you would normally do before rushing Tam into a fight that she's not ready for is you would have her fight those contenders and former champions that are floating around, like Lonnie Daniels.
Lonnie Daniels has her eyes fixed on the middleweight division. The 3-weight world champion has conquered heavyweight, light heavyweight, and super middle. Could middleweight become a division for her?
And it actually might. That is a more sensible fight for Thibeault than fighting Claressa straight away. And underneath it all, I think Sean Zettel knows it.
It's common sense for any avid boxing fan, which is what he's supposed to be.
The saving grace, perhaps, is Tam won't allow herself to be rushed into that fight. MVP's not gonna pay for it.
You think they're gonna kick out $2 million to Claressa Shields? Because that's what she's gonna ask for.
No, they're not. They're not gonna pay her that, because if you're making that kind of money, then you're the one supposed to be making the offers, not them. And I don't think they're gonna pay for the fight, so it would be on Claressa to try to get it going.
Would she?
Perhaps for peanuts on the dollar, as fighting Claressa Shields never paid out life-altering money to one of her opponents. She's not Katie.
No.
She's not Amanda.
No.
Realistically, I wouldn't consider putting Tam Thibeault in the ring with Claressa Shields for another 2 years, as time is on Tam's side. She's 29.
Isn't that hypocritical of you?
Claressa's 31. 2 years from now, she'll be 33. Not too old to still compete at the highest levels of the sport. Far from it.
33?
The idea behind it is a simple one. If you did that fight now, Tam would be overmatched, she'd lose, in a fight that isn't worth much.
I've got a problem telling the truth. I like Tam a lot more than I like Claressa, in every possible way you can imagine. But the sooner you do that fight, the sooner she loses it.
Let Claressa carry out her plan to face Lauren Price at some point, then her Olympic sister, quote-unquote, Michaela Mayer. Let her do that.
She said she wants to get pregnant next year. I think she needs to.
Run along for 9 months or so. A year, maybe 2. Let these divisions repopulate so you actually have something to come back to.
Because if you fought Tam Thibeault now, you're not going to get a lot of credit for it, because she doesn't have a lot of experience, and most people with 2 functioning brain cells know that. It's not a money fight yet.
Far from it.
Elsewhere in the world of boxing, World Boxing News details Zuffa's endgame, why not naming world titles is a stroke of genius.
Opinion. The reason Zuffa Boxing, TKO, and Paramount repeatedly avoid naming boxing's recognized world titles may finally be clear. At least, that's the theory World Boxing News reached after watching the same pattern play out again following Aaron McKenna's victory in Dublin. The penny dropped during McKenna's post-fight celebrations after he defeated Etinosa Oliha to win the vacant IBF middleweight title. McKenna had just become IBF champion, yet the images and promotional material appearing around him continued to use the word world champion or world title without identifying the organization that had actually sanctioned the fight.
They were deliberately unspecific.
We've seen it before with Brian Garcia and Conor Benn, which was announced for a quote-unquote world title, without the WBC being mentioned by name. Noel Mikhailian is the reigning WBC Cruiserweight champion, yet Zuffa described him only as a 2-time world champion when announcing his fight against Jayo Pataya. Now McKenna is an IBF champion, without the IBF seemingly being part of the public-facing story. While different events are producing the same pattern, so here's the theory. On the face of it, the strategy is genius.
It's sort of like meeting someone and then deliberately mispronouncing their name, like what I do with Ryan Garcia.
As I like to call him Brian Garcia.
It's a sign of disrespect. My interest in boxing and Brian, well, he's not important. I believe that is the message that Zuffa is trying to carry out here, and so do the good people at World Boxing News. Dana White and TKO don't need to get rid of the sanctioning bodies now. In fact, they can keep working with them, mention that relationship when necessary, and allow Zuffa's fighters to fight for their titles, but publicly, they keep saying world title, quote-unquote, and their fighters become known as, quote-unquote, world champions. Which world title? Which world champion? Those distinctions could become less important if you stop making them in the first place. WBN's theory is that this may be quite deliberate and part of a much longer game, the IBF.
WBC, WBA, and WBO have spent decades establishing their championships. Boxing fans understand what those belts represent, and fighters still want to win them.
So you can't think that you can just get rid of them straight away, not without consequences. Your fighters still need them.
Because Zuffa doesn't have that history. Its championship is new and currently has nowhere near the recognition of the 4 established organizations. But what if Zuffa doesn't need to build that recognition from scratch and simply places its championship alongside the others? If audiences repeatedly see IBF champions, WBC champions, and Zuffa champions all described simply as world champions, the distinction between them could gradually become blurred. Ladies and gentlemen, what they are describing is the natural decay of time and the erosion of the status quo if enough years pass.
With some conditioning, a nudge, what is new and nuanced now will be normal in about a decade.
Now, for established boxing fans, that may never work because they know exactly what the IBF, WBC, WBA, and WBO are and understand the difference. But Zuffa brings its own enormous audience, while newer boxing fans may not understand or even care how the existing champion system works. To them, a world champion is a world champion, and that could be exactly the point.
The older guys like me and you aren't gonna look at a Zuffa belt as being a legitimate world title, but a younger audience,
They might. Jai Opataya could be the perfect example. Jai Opataya is currently the only Zuffa boxing champion, and what happens next could provide the clearest example yet. Opataya faces Mikhailian on September 12th. Mikhailian currently holds the WBC Cruiserweight title, but his decision to face Opataya instead of fulfilling his mandatory obligation against David Benavidez has put that title in jeopardy. So if no sanctioning body championship is ultimately attached to Opataya versus Mikhailian, Zuffa still has its own belt. Opataya can still grace posters as a world cruiserweight champion, and the fight can still be presented as a world title fight. For the audience watching Zuffa, what really changed? That's where the waters become muddy. If fans become accustomed to Zuffa's belt sitting alongside the traditional titles without anyone constantly differentiating between them, the new title gains something incredibly valuable: legitimacy through familiarity. Then comes the potential endgame.
I see what the strategy is. If you told anybody this now, they'd tell you they don't recognize the Zuffa belt as a legitimate world title, but in 2, 3 years, 4, 5, their perspective could be entirely different. You may be talking about a new set of boxing fans, a younger one,
that aren't as attached to the major 4 sanctioning bodies as their predecessors, though understanding the strategy does not guarantee that it works.
Boxing is big on its own lineage, its own history, and the Zuffa boxing belt, it has none. After enough time has passed, and the Zuffa championship has become accepted alongside those titles, TKO could eventually move away from the IBF, the WBC, the WBA, and the WBO altogether, and continue with only the Zuffa belt at the core of its system.
In theory, they could, except that relies on the Zuffa belt being accepted in the first place. And for a perspective, the IBO title, the dark green one you sometimes see fighters wearing, that title was founded in 1988. Here in 2026, it's still not accepted as a full world title.
So how long would it take for the Zuffa belt to be accepted?
The article continues. In this scenario, there would be no need to rip up boxing's championship structure overnight because it would be done gradually. Keep the sanctioning bodies involved and work with them. Let your fighters win their belts and call everybody a world champion, but don't constantly remind your audience which organization made them one. Eventually, your own championship gets called exactly the same thing, world champion. WBN cannot say with 100% conviction that this is what Dana White, TKO, and Paramount are planning unless someone involved confirms it. Nobody can. But the repeated avoidance of naming recognized sanctioning body championships is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. As a mere coincidence? If this is the plan, it's superbly engineered and still some way from being fully executed. The sanctioning bodies remain involved today, and their titles still carry the history and recognition Zuffa's belt does not yet possess. But if the distinction between an IBF, WBC, WBA, WBO, or Zuffa World Champion becomes less important to the audience with every passing event. TKO may never need to convince those fans that its belt belongs alongside the others. By the time the distinction matters, they may already accept it as just another world title.
While I agree with the people at World Boxing News that Zuffa is being deliberately unspecific about the sanctioning bodies, dismissive almost of their distinctions of their alphabet titles, it doesn't have to be this long-winded or elaborate. It could just be they're being dismissive out of disrespect because it wasn't their initial plan to have to work with these people who don't add any monetary value to the pot.
All their value is intrinsic.
They're not the stars of the promotion. The fighters are. And for the money that Zuffa's kicking out to make these events happen, they're not going to allow the alphabets to rob them of the spotlight. It could be as simple as that.
Danny Boy 368, a friend of the channel, said, "Hey Ring, yesterday on the live you said it's their plan for Zuffa to get Eddie and Frank out of boxing by 2030. If they succeed, how long do you think it would take them to take over the whole American boxing scene, since it's very weak now and not as strong as the British market?"
Addressing the question, because the American market is now weaker than the British one and the powers that be aren't what they used to be, taking over the U.S. market is contingent upon how many U.S. fighters they can get to sign with them to go over there. Right now,
While they're overspending and have fast developed a reputation for it,
they're not struggling to get fighters over there right now, but what kind of fighters are they signing? Pay attention. Richardson Hitchens? Edgar Berlanga? If the future of Zuffa as the biggest promotion in America hinges on their success, then they're in trouble. Ask yourself, can you build a company around those fighters and other fighters like them? I've maintained that Zuffa's signing a lot of fighters in a short while, but many of them are fringe contenders, castaways, or gatekeepers
that already have a few losses in the column.
I know you have to start somewhere, but starting there and overpaying while you do it, that's not soluble, that's not sustainable, that will not last.
I don't yet see the ingredients for Zuffa Boxing's takeover of the American market because at this time their stable just isn't strong enough. They're gonna have to sign more fighters, a lot more fighters, and better ones that the audience actually cares about. Consider that they just picked up Shakur Stevenson and they don't even know what to do with him.
Not that Shakur Stevenson is even a fan favorite, because he's not.
God forbid that he makes his Zuffa Boxing debut and it's anything like his Edwin De Los Santos fight or the Nicotila fight before that he goes out there, gets a huge purse, but lays an egg.
That ain't gonna be good for business.
We're on the outside looking in, attempting to decipher what Zuffa Boxing's long-term plan is and how that might look in a few years, but it's still early days, and there are still many variables.
The sweet science, as it were, as an industry, is not an exact science. There are some things you can control, but many things that you can't.
Do I think they take over the US market? I would say it's too soon to make that kind of an estimation. I don't yet see all the ingredients for that to happen. There are some.
But those eggs need more bacon.